the Trump administration is keenly aware that punishing India to punish Russia under a new sanctions law would be monumental folly, a grave mistake. If India becomes collateral damage in Washington's desire to make Russia pay for its sins, we can kiss the progress of the last 20 years goodbye. Farewell. Adieu. Sayonara. India's friends understand the high stakes. You can't have a strategic partnership and penalize the partner. Many remember the corrosive effects of U.S. sanctions following India's nuclear tests in 1998, which took a decade of hard work to fix. But as a wise man said, Americans don't remember and Indians can't forget. The U.S. Congress has to act to prevent a repeat of history because this time sanctions will also hurt the United States. A gentle reminder, the 2018 U.S. National Security Strategy envisions an expansion of defense and security cooperation with India and welcomes its emergence as a leading global power. It must be noted that President Donald Trump signed the law in question, countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act or CAATSA, with reluctance. In a longish statement, he called law seriously flawed. More attuned to reducing the number of enemies than multiplying them, Trump said it will drive China, Russia and North Korea much closer together. The Pentagon gets it. Secretary of Defense James Mattis has argued strongly in favor of exempting India from CAATSA in front of the Senate. Sanctioning India, Vietnam and Indonesia would eventually paralyze the U.S. and reward Russia, he said. Russia is in a position, basically, to checkmate us. Mattis is one of the most respected members of Trump's cabinet. The nominee for Chief of the Pacific Command PACOM, Admiral Philip Davidson, also warned during a congressional hearing earlier this month that sanctioning India, Indonesia and Vietnam would hinder the growing relationships and increase each partner's dependence on Russia. Admiral Harry Harris, the current PACOM commander likely to be nominated ambassador to either Australia or South Korea, called India a key partner and a great strategic opportunity, in his comments to the Senate Armed Services Committee. I think we ought to look at ways to have a glide path, so that we can continue to trade in arms with India, he said when asked about the implications of sanctions. CAATSA primarily targets Russia, but it ropes in any country that trades with Russia's defense and intelligence sectors, which India does. New Delhi is in advanced talks with Moscow to buy the S-400 air defense system, besides frigates and helicopters, all of which can potentially trigger sanctions. Mattis has requested the U.S. Congress to tweak CAATSA and give the State Department the authority to grant a waiver. The law already has a waiver provision, but the way it's written makes it unworkable. Not only must the administration cite a national security reason to exempt countries but also certify that Russians are not meddling in America's internal affairs anymore. That certification is impossible to make under the current circumstances. Another option CAATSA provides is to delay the imposition of sanctions for 180 days, which the administration can do without going back to the Congress, and keep renewing the 180-day relief indefinitely. But that still means the word sanctions and India are used in the same sentence. It is not the best solution. U.S. officials say that while there is great sympathy for India, the law is very complex and hinges on two words: significant transactions. The S-400 deal would qualify. Will the Congress act in time, or would some members try to extract a price from the countries that warrant exemption as Mattis has requested? The reality is that India will continue to buy Russian arms for the foreseeable future even as it diversifies purchases. The U.S. is already India's second largest weapons supplier. But India can't go cold turkey on Russian weapons for obvious reasons. It will take years to phase out old Russian tanks. Also, critical systems Russia has sold to India are not available from other sources. It's as simple as that. The sentiment on Capitol Hill is largely in favor of India, but there is potential for trouble because of domestic politics. It is hard to overstate the depth of anger against Russia, starting with its meddling in the 2016 elections, its role in the Syrian crisis, its courtship of the Taliban, the allegation that Russia was behind the poisoning of a former spy in Britain, and not to forget Russia's annexation of Crimea back in 2014, which led to CAATSA in the first place. The Democrats want to hold the Trump administration's feet to the fire on Russia, and CAATSA is their vehicle. 11 Democratic senators, led by Robert Menendez, the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and a few rising stars of the party, wrote a stringent letter to the State Department in March asking why there was no progress on secondary sanctions on countries conducting business with Russia. They demanded detailed analysis on the current status of S-400 negotiations with India, Turkey, China, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and steps taken to prevent those sales. The Democrats are not in majority and can only go so far. But Menendez will likely raise the sanctions issue in every hearing, especially one on South Asia. What may also be a problem is the disenchantment with India among key Republicans. A few members of the Foreign Relations Committee, including Chairman Bob Corker, have repeatedly questioned India's record on religious freedom, women's rights and violence against minorities. And issues can get conflated. These senators might ask for forward movement on some of the pending issues, such as signing of the two remaining enabling agreements between India and the U.S. to allow better interoperability between the two defense forces. The issue has lingered for years. In the end, India most likely won't be sanctioned, but the process could be messy. Disclaimer: views expressed above are the author's own.